And welcome everybody to another episode of Glove Up or Shut Up right here on AngryMarks.com. My name is Peter H. I'm joined once again by my co-host from Omaha, Nebraska, Stevie J.
If I never see Michael Bisping get knocked out like that again, it'll be too soon.
Yeah, that was a hell of a knockout in the main event there in China this past weekend, but we've got China to talk about, we've got two UFC shows to talk about, and we've got Bellator, so a stacked show this week, and we have some news as well. But let's go right to it, Stevie. Michael Bisping and Kelvin Gastelum for what, some are saying a possible, number one contenders fight. If Kelvin won, or if Bisping wins, you could make the argument that his retirement fight could be has some serious consequences. But let's just say Bisping's ranking suffered a huge blow.
Yeah, well, both things suffered a huge blow. The ranking suffered and Bisping suffered because Kelvin Gastelum, if you haven't already seen this replay, my advice is don't watch it in slow motion because it was bad enough seeing it in real time, but in slow motion, at first it's okay because you see him land the right hand and you're like, okay, he stunned Bisping, and then you see the left hand, and the left hand, when it connects in slow motion, you see Michael Bisping's head move 3 different directions. You see it snap to the side, snap to the back, and then he falls down dead. And I was scared for him. I was legitimately like, oh my God. Because that looked like multiple concussions from one punch. And the fact that he was able to give a coherent interview immediately after that, I was just stunned. I couldn't believe that the guy could even talk after that.
It was a very vicious knockout, and if you're watching it in slow motion, it could be knockout of the year because it was so violent, so quick. The problem with Bisping is that, and I don't want to make this joke. I think I said this last week in jest, but I was saying that when he fought GSP, he didn't see that punch coming.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he didn't see this punch coming either.
No. He definitely did not. He got completely caught. He was not prepared for it, didn't see it, got literally destroyed by it.
And, I feel bad for Bisping because, he's going to be tarnishing his legacy by getting... This is the first time in his career he got beaten back-to-back fights.
Right.
So his last fight, he could go out on his shield, but he runs the risk of losing his last 3 fights going into retirement.
But he also probably needs to retire at this point. So if he wants to take that one last fight in London, you can't really say no to the guy given all the favors he's done for UFC over the years and all of the things he's accomplished to this point in his career. But after that fight in London, after you had the big hometown crowd cheering you whether you win or lose, just call it a day. Do something else, Michael, because your vision is not 100%. You're getting viciously knocked out now. You don't want to see the Chuck Liddell thing where he just gets knocked out over and over and over again.
The question now becomes not if he fights GSP again or fights for a number one contendership or what have you. The question is, who do you put in front of him in London?
Well, it's got to be somebody that was lower on the rankings than Gastelum, so that's where you start.
And also, another thought that I had, and I think I texted you this after the fight, when it comes to a fight like in this caliber of getting knocked out, the commission would give an automatic medical suspension.
Honestly, you should have had one after the fight with GSP because he got rocked before he got choked out. So the fact that he even got turned around this fast to fight again in Shanghai, I don't really know how or why he was able to be cleared that quickly. If he was, I have to accept that it's a fact and they looked at him and decided he was good to go, but I would not have cleared a guy to fight again 3 weeks after what GSP did to him.
Well, technically it was a submission victory. It was not a knockout.
And I know, but he went unconscious. First he got rocked, and then he got choked out till he blacked out. So I would not clear a guy to fight again after that.
And
not in 3 weeks.
Come out And people have come out and said the same thing, like Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
He said the same thing. Like, a lot of people are coming out saying there's no way 3-week turnaround after getting rocked by GSP. He should not have been allowed by the commission to fight. Then again, the commissions, I mean, the fight was in China. The commission there had to approve it. There's no commission in China as far as I know.
Yeah, that's probably why and how this happened. I'm sure UFC said, we cleared him, he's good to go, and China went, okay.
I mean, it was a quick turnaround because of Silva's drug test, and you had to find a fighter who had a visa to fight in China. Well, Bisping fought in Macau.
Yeah, I mean, I know all the reasons why this happened, and financially I know it works out for Bisping because he gets like $500,000 a fight, and they probably gave him an extra bonus for doing them a favor and saving their show, so...
Right.
Yeah, it was lucrative for him. It will provide for him and his family, and I can't take any of that away, but some things money can't buy, and your long-term health and your livelihood after fighting, you can't replace that with money.
No. You have to look. I think he looked at the dollar signs. He looked at the financial aspect of it, not so much the long-term
consequences.
Health.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we should move on to the other fights here. I'm just going to check something here because I did see a note about Bisping. About this fight, he still plans to retire as his retirement fight in March. We already talked about that. And Kelvin at the post-fight presser is requesting a shot against Whitaker for the undisputed title. So, Kelvin fights Whitaker, but I thought I guess if GSP is taking some time to heal that neck injury, then maybe you do Whitaker and Kelvin, because it wasn't like he fought a long fight and didn't really get rocked or took any real punishment.
Right. But you said let's move on to the other fights, so I'm going to suggest we stick to the main card. If you really want to go into Fight Pass, you can overrule me on that, but I'm going to say we stick with the main card, and that includes Li Jingliang beating Zakatao 2 minutes 57 seconds into the first round. Pretty much knocked him cold.
Yeah, it was a highlight-worthy knockout here. It was the Nesty plunge, but he fell forward.
Yeah, I think Zach took a couple of shots on the ground. He didn't need to because the ref was out of position, but it wasn't brutal. It was just slightly unnecessary.
Did you see who the ref was, though? I was surprised.
I've honestly forgotten at this point.
Herb Dean.
Oh, that's right.
When has Herb Dean ever out of position like that?
He has been on a couple of occasions.
But it was like, I was like, the first thought I had was the ref was way out of position, and then I thought, wait a minute, that's Herb Dean. What the hell? He's usually right on top of things. Usually.
Well, speaking of being on top of things, you're usually the one to criticize the judging. Now it's my turn. In this Wayne Guan versus Bruce Leroy fight, Alex Caceres fight, there was a point in that first round where Guan rocked Caceres so badly that the fight could have been stopped. I would have given that a 10-8 because that was very, very close to the fight being over. I wasn't even sure that Bruce Leroy could come back out for the second round. I'm sorry, I'm just going to keep calling him that because I've been calling him that ever since he was on BET. So I really thought he was done at that point, but he came back, fought 2 more rounds, and I gave Guan every one of these rounds, and yet one judge saw it 29-28 for Bruce Leroy. What? What fight was that judge watching? And how did he only get 2 rounds from the other 2 judges? Guan should have gotten all 3 rounds, and one of them should have been a 10-8. This should not have been a split decision.
I see what you're saying, and I had it 29-28 for Guan as well.
So which round did you give Bruce Leroy then? The third?
I think it was the third, yeah.
I still thought Guan won that. He did better in the third round, but not that much better.
I think the judge that gave the 29-28 for Caceres, I think he needs to rewatch the fight. But, I mean, in those close rounds, I have no problem giving him the third. I definitely gave Guan the first.
Yeah, the first is a blowout. There's no question about that.
The second Guan won, I can see the slight. I gave the slight edge to Guan in that one. The third one, from what I saw, Caceres won it, but it was one of those rounds where I could have scored it either way. But if I had to put a gun to my head, I would have given it to Saris. But it is what it is, and Juon wins. Should be a unanimous decision, but it's not.
Yeah. Well, anyway, the other fight on the main card, we didn't have to worry about the judges because Alex Garcia got a rear naked choke on Muslim Salikov, and this was considered to be an upset because Salikov was this big kickboxing star, had this great reputation coming in. Everybody thought he was this phenomenal striker, so it was just believed that he was going to come in here and do this kung fu thing that he likes to do in kickboxing because he's won 185 fights and knocked out 76 fights. And Alex Garcia didn't care about any of that. He said, this guy's a kickboxer. He's probably not got great wrestling defense. I'm going to take him down. And that's what he did over and over again until he finally got on his back and choked him out.
Outclassed.
Yeah, well.
Just outclassed. That's what it was.
It's really funny, though, because I'm sure that Salikov has some future potential given all the hype he had. And if he gets better at defending takedowns, he could actually be something. But in this debut, Alex Garcia found that weakness and exposed it. So you got to give him credit.
All right. So as far as we're going to wrap up that card because we have lots of stuff to get to this week.
Yeah, and we don't really know most of these fighters on the Fight Pass prelims. It's a lot of local fighters to China.
So let's talk about the news this week. And we mentioned it last week. Ben Askren had a retirement fight.
I watched that fight, actually.
How was it?
It was quick and decisive. He completely destroyed Shinyaoki, which really shouldn't come as a surprise.
No. The problem I had is that now he's retired, he called out GSP?
Yeah, that was a little weird, because they sent Mitch Chilson in there to interview him. He's like, I'm here with your winner, the undefeated world champion, Ben Askren. And, he's asking him about his last fight, and he's like, well, I think I'm done, unless I can get a fight to prove that I'm the best in the world, because that's all I want to do, is prove I'm the best, and there's a guy out there who's probably the best or thinks he's the best, but we'll see. It's like, okay, you're basically teasing that you want to go to UFC, but UFC doesn't want you, so you're probably retired, buddy, so why are you playing this pussyfoot game? But, I mean, it's his right to, he can say what he wants. They gave him a live mic, so if he wants to tease fighting GSP to prove he's the best in the world, he can do that, but I don't think he's getting that fight.
It's like, it's like saying I'm going on a diet and then, hey, I'm meeting my friends for some buffet. It's like, aren't you on a diet?
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing. Let's move on quickly to some fight announcements. Daniel Taylor is fighting JJ Aldrich at UFC Fight Night 124 in St. Louis.
All right.
That's a show you should really go to, Stevie.
I don't know if that works out in my schedule, but it's like a 6-hour drive, so that's not an easy commitment to make.
Georgi Karakanian versus Henry Corrales set for Bellator 192 in Southern California.
Yep, I broke that one on MMA Mania, and that's a pretty interesting fight because they're both featherweight contenders, and Karakanian's a former champion. He's had a up and down road in Bellator, whereas Corrales was kind of underrated and is now starting to shine a little bit, so they're both in a position to elevate the other with a win.
The Mauler had shoulder surgery, and I saw the picture on Instagram that he posted. He'll be out for a little while.
So, yeah, that doesn't look like he'll get any chance at Cormier anytime soon, then.
No, and Amanda Nunes said something this week that it's a head-scratcher, and I'm not sure how you're going to respond to this. She said she needs blonde hair and blue eyes to get a push in the UFC.
I think she was making a comparison to Ronda Rousey. I think that's what she's going for.
Okay. I was surprised. It caught me off guard when I saw that. It's like, it doesn't matter what your looks are. It depends on your fighting ability.
Well, I can see where she's coming from. She probably feels like she hasn't been given the all-star treatment that former champions have.
Okay. Omari Akhmedov against Marvin Vettori for UFC 219.
All right.
And let's see. Anything else on my list here? we're going to talk about Bellator 189 in a second, and it's going to be interesting because that will be David Rickles setting the record for most fights for Bellator.
Correct.
And that looks like that is all the news I have on my sheet this week. Yes, okay. Oh, no, maybe not. Yes. Sorry, I'm just checking to see if that update was anything new. I hate it when I get a news update as we're doing the show. It's like, is this? Okay, I've already talked about that. All right, so let's talk about Bellator 189 from Thackerville, Oklahoma.
And you just mentioned it, so we'll go ahead and discuss it. Originally, Adam Piccolotti and Derek Anderson were supposed to have a fight, but Anderson pulled out with an injury, and David Rickles was available because previously David Rickles was supposed to fight Brandon Ward in October, and he pulled out with an injury. So what do? You match the two guys together at a catch weight of 160 pounds, and you have a fight on Bellator 189.
Is there an injury bug in Bellator?
Kind of feels like it these last few months. We've had a lot of fights fall through, including some main events.
That's why the Grand Prix might have a very interesting backup list?
Yeah, including somebody who will tell you that you don't know Jack.
Stevie.
Yeah, well, it's his own tagline, so.
All right, so let's talk about this main event.
Yeah, it's Julia Budd defending the title against Arlene Blencowe at 145 pounds. Now, these two have met before, and it was a very close fight the first time the two of them fought, with, I'd say, 1 round apiece and 1 round a complete toss-up. And when it went to the judges, one of them said, it's a tie. It's absolutely dead even between the two. Nobody won it. And the other 2 judges gave it to Julia Budd by majority decision. So Blencowe's got to feel like she's got a really good chance to take the title from Budd here, since she fought her so close the first time, and she's coming in on a 3-fight win streak. But then again, Julia Budd is a really kind of extraordinary athlete. Like, her takedowns, her striking, her Muay Thai, her everything. She is truly in a class all her own, which is why she's the Bellator champion right now. And just because she was a little bit flat the last time that she fought Blencowe, I don't think now that she's the champion, she's going to be less than she was the first time she fought Blencowe. If anything, she'll be more. But Anger Fist is called Anger Fist for a reason, because she's got a boxing background as well as a mixed martial arts pedigree. She's won 8 out of her last 10 fights, with one of those 2 losses being to Budd. So Blencowe is very legit and a very tough test for Budd in her first title defense. So if you're listening to this right now and wondering whether or not you should watch Bellator 189, since there's something else on that same night we're going to talk about in a little bit, I'll say if you don't watch one, DVR the other, because you're going to want to see it.
Yeah, I think Budd is going to take this fight with a different mindset, because now that she's the champion, you know, she's got that bigger target on her back. And I think she has to be wary, because she's fighting someone she's fought before, that the game plan she came into with that first fight won't exactly work the next time.
Right.
So it's going to be interesting to see what tricks that Budd can pull out here, because, I mean, I would rely on the striking myself, but it's going to be hard. You might have to back up a few things and try to figure out, okay, if maybe in mid-fight you alter the game plan because, you know, your striking isn't cutting it and the takedown defense is subpar. You know what I mean? Like, you have to, I think it's going to be one where you have to change your game plan on the fly to win this fight.
I still expect Budd to retain, though.
Oh, absolutely. I do as well. Chris Honeycutt and Rafael Lovato.
Very interesting middleweight matchup. That division is really up for grabs right now, with Cavallo Sakara coming up in over a week, and a lot of people are trying to get queued up in line to be the next contender behind that fight. Right now, Gegard Mousasi is probably the number 1, but one of these 4 guys on the card that's fighting at middleweight could upend that and move into contention, because Lovato is undefeated. He is one of the few Americans to win a World Jiu-Jitsu Championship. That puts him in a very elite category right next to BJ Penn. So you don't want to go to the ground with this guy, but the thing that's interesting is for such a decorated jiu-jitsu artist, it turns out he's also got really great striking because he's finished Marcelo Nunez and Charles Hackman. So don't get in a stand-up war with Lovato because that could backfire. If you think that's your way to get around his jiu-jitsu, you're mistaken. And Honeycutt, he's a banger too. Even though he's got a great wrestling background, he was an Edinburgh guy, which has turned out a lot of great mixed martial arts wrestlers. You don't want to stand and trade with him either because 5 of his 10 wins are by knockout. So this could be a very bang-up affair, or it could be a very one-sided affair where Lovato takes him to the ground and traps an arm and finishes him off.
So the problem I have here is that there's a big height difference here. Lovato's 6'3" and Honeycutt's 5'10".
Yeah,
so
Lovato is a beast, but don't take that away from Chris Honeycutt, though, because even though he's smaller in stature, that's actually good for a wrestler because that means he's quicker to get down to the base, and that also means he's got really strong arms and legs because he's packing a lot of muscle into a smaller frame. So takedowns could really come easy for him if he wants, but it depends on Lovato giving up those takedowns, and, you know, he may actually want to pull guard and go for a submission. So that could be a huge mistake if Honeycutt shoots.
That's the thing. I mean, you made my point for me when it comes to the wrestling, but also Honeycutt could land one hell of an uppercut here too.
That's what I'm saying. He's got knockouts before. He's done it many times. So this is a very intriguing fight. Again, I'm going to say, if you're watching one and not the other, DVR the other, because you're going to want to see some of these fights.
Let's talk about Kato and Njokuani.
Well, again, what can I say? But we got a war here at middleweight because we got two guys who are known for highlight reel knockouts. Kato has the Superman punches and the spinning back fists, and Njokuani has the one-punch walk-off, bang, and it's over, karate-style striking. So you got very, very flashy, very exciting fighters in this middleweight contest, and I'd love to see either one of these guys challenge Cavallo for the title. I know that Mousasi is up next, but man, it would be so much fun. The only thing that I can add to that is that Njokuani is coming off a pretty devastating loss in his last fight against Andrei Koreshkov. Got finished in the first round, so he probably wants to come back out here and make a statement. Hisaki Kato is not a guy that you go out there and make a statement with because he usually does the exact opposite thing to you.
I'm worried about this fight because I don't want this fight to go to the judges. I want this fight to be decisive.
Well, you know what? Kato's last fight, it went to the judges, but it was decisive because he was in there with Hollick Gracie, and he's got that Gracie name and that Gracie jiu-jitsu and that background where you just think, man, if he gets it to the ground, it's over. But it turned out he only got Kato to the ground in the third round and then couldn't finish him. So I thought that was a very decisive performance on Kato's part. He outclassed the jiu-jitsu guy. So even though it went 3 rounds, he proved something. I
like the fact you're saying he outclassed the jiu-jitsu guy. I mean, that takes skill to outclass someone.
Right. With the Gracie name. That's why I'm saying it's very impressive when you do that to a Gracie.
All right. What about Cavallo and Cecilia?
Well, that's actually on the preliminary card, but...
Well, that got bumped down? Oh, okay.
Yeah, that got bumped down for Rickles and Piccolotti.
Oh, my bad. Okay, let's talk about Piccolotti and Rickles then.
Well, I think I already did. I said that it was added to the card because of the injury, so I like the fact that Rickles is getting this fight because he deserved it after Brennan Ward pulled out, and I like the fact that Piccolotti doesn't lose a payday as well, so it's good for both of them, and it's at a catch weight, so they should both come in feeling really fresh and healthy, and based on that, I would expect it to be a really fast fight. I figure somebody's going to go in there and throw a home run punch.
I hate to ask this. I really, really hate to ask this, Stevie, but is this a mistake by Rickles taking this fight?
I don't know if I'd call it a mistake. He's a very tough fighter, and they are actually very well matched in size. It's 5'11" to 6'0", so I don't think it's a mistake.
But his record, though, he's 9-0. Like, he's taking on an undefeated fighter on short notice.
No, Piccolotti is not undefeated. He lost to Goichi Yamauchi at Bellator 183.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that fight.
Yep, got choked out in the first round.
Still, like, short notice, Rickles, he's going to set the record for most fights. He knows that Bellator cage like the back of his hand.
Mm-hmm.
To take on a fighter who, at this short notice, I mean, it's good on him because, it's someone that the promotion can rely on. But I'm really tempted to take Piccolotti in what some might call an upset.
I think Rickles probably never broke camp once that fight with Brennan Ward got postponed. He probably figured it was going to be added to another card, so I don't view it as being a short notice fight for him. I view it as being a guy who's been in shape for several months now and really hungry to fight, so I just don't view it the same way you do.
That's fair. All right, let's see what else is on here. Did you want to talk about the Lebrock and Dufresne's fight?
Well, that's another one that Dufresne should have been fighting sooner, but injuries changed that, and she had to postpone the fight, so she's finally getting that shot here with Amber Lebrock, so it's an interesting fight because Lebrock's 2-1, and Dufresne, we know her record from UFC of all the wars she had there, and now she gets to fight at a much more comfortable weight for her, so we'll see how it pans out.
All right, so I think, did you want to talk about Cecilia and Galval before we move on to UFC?
Really quickly, everybody knows Sam Cecilia from his time in UFC. He lost 3 straight fights and the promotion let him go, so now he gets to reinvent himself in Bellator and hopefully make a name for himself at featherweight. Galvo, as we know, is the former bantamweight champion. He tried going to featherweight, and so far it's been a little bit of a mixed bag, so he could use a win over a former UFC guy to really establish himself, but I'm not sure what I expect out of this between the two of them. It could go either way.
All right, so let's move on to this weekend's UFC double shot here. Let's start with the Ultimate Fighter finale on FS1 and UFC Fight Pass, and also in Canada it's on TSN 5, and we don't know the main event.
No, we absolutely don't, because they still have to have the final episode of this season of Tough.
So we're going to find out when you guys find out. We don't know who's in the finals, so TBA versus TBA, and just stay tuned for that tomorrow night on the finale of the episode.
Actually, I believe one half of the bracket is confirmed.
Oh, right. We do know one half, my mistake, but it's hard to predict the opponent when it's that shadowy figure, right? So
it's Nico Montano versus TBD.
Exactly. Let's move on to Andrew Sanchez and Ryan James from Newfoundland.
All right. Well, since it's a newfie, why don't you start?
Oh, jeez. Well, I like James in this fight. Sanchez, it's a great opponent for him. I like the fact that this is high up on the card because this could be fight of the night. I see James winning. I just don't know how yet. If I had to choose, I would say James wins third round via stoppage.
That's fair. I'll agree with that.
Brett Johns and Joe Soto.
Well, I like Joe Soto. I like his 3 wins in a row. He's got some momentum. Johns, let's see. He's undefeated, 14-0. So, man, coin flip.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had the same thought when I saw that. I was like, I mean, I want to lean towards Johns in this, but it's hard to pick against Soto sometimes, you know?
Right. But, yeah, Johns does seem like he's got even more momentum on his side than Soto.
All right, let's move on to Sean O'Malley and Terrion Ware.
All right. Let's see. The name I'm more familiar with of the two of them would be Terrion Ware, but I'm going to look up his record on SureDog just to confirm that. So, Terrion Flash Ware, he is 17-6, 6 knockouts, 3 submissions, 8 decisions. His UFC debut, he lost to Cody Stamann. The guy he's fighting, Sean O'Malley, is 8-0 with 6 knockouts, 1 submission. And this is his UFC debut. So, based on that, who do you like, Peter?
I like Ware. I know you're picking Ware because of his nickname, but I like Ware. He's the more experienced fighter here. and when you have an experienced fighter, they seem like the one with the more fights seems to be more calm in the cage. Nothing really rattles them as if they were like 2-0 or something. Mm-hmm. Based on the experience factor here, I'm going to go with Ware. But I mean, what's the old saying? Like, this is why you fight the fights, because you never know what to expect.
Right.
But I think Ware will. I don't like saying this, Stevie, but I'm going to say Ware by decision.
Yeah, that's actually a safe pick.
And rounding up the main card, we got Gerald Meerschaert against Eric Spicely. Speaking of someone who's got a lot of experience, holy crap, 35 fights.
Yeah, so does that mean you're picking Spicely?
Well, no, is it Meerschaert that has the 35 fights?
Right, but are you picking Spicely because Meerschaert is, like, over the hump, too many fights?
I like Spicely's power. Yeah, I'm going to go with Spicely.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's too much of a... I mean, at some point you have to say experience can only get you so far. With the previous fight, he's experienced, but not 30 fights experience,
Right.
Spicely, I like the way he fights, especially at 185. It's a good style for him, and as long as he can make the weight, I think he'll win.
Right, and in his last fight, he got choked out, so he didn't take too much damage, and that's like 6 months ago, so I'm going with the guy with less tread worn off his tires.
Exactly. All right, so let's move on to UFC 218, Holloway versus Aldo, the rematch, and this, Stevie, is one of the fights that has definitely gotten a lot of publicity because this could be the show of the year.
Well, it's a pretty stacked lineup. You got Alistair and Nagano, you got Cejudo and Pettis, you got Eddie and Gaethje, you got Tisha Torres, Michelle Watterson, and that's just the main card. So they have pretty well stacked this up.
Well, let's see even in the prelims, Paul Felder's on here, Alex Oliveira, you've got Courtney Casey and Felice Herring on the prelims. Mm-hmm. If you go down, I mean, it's a great card.
Even the opening fight on Fight Pass, Amanda Cooper and Angela Magana, that's a great fight too.
Yeah, and we saw Magana at the Ultimate Fighter show there a few weeks ago. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, this is a great fight card overall. I really like it, but let's start with the main event because this is a late replacement fight because an injury to Frankie Edgar.
Right, so instead of a new number one contender, we get a rematch from the former champion fighting the new champion. But the thing is here, once again, I'm going to use the phrase worn too much tread off the tires. I feel like Jose Aldo is still one of the best in the world, but is he the best in the world? Well, if you look at his recent record, you'd have to say no because he's gotten knocked out by both McGregor and Holloway. Before that, absolutely he was the best. No question about it. But now I'm starting to think it's been a very long, very fruitful career for him. Almost 30 fights going into this fight. So it just seems like even though he's only 31 and that's still young, he's got a lot of time left. It's hard for me to pick him against Holloway, just seeing how much Holloway has grown and improved and developed and become the elite fighter he is right now, and how he dismantled Aldo in their last fight, and the long win streak that Max Holloway is on right now, and the list of guys that he's run through to get there. Cub Swanson, Charles Oliveira, Jeremy Stevens, Anthony Pettis, Ricardo Lamas. I mean, it was inevitable looking at that record that he would beat Aldo and take the title. You just, looking back at it now, there's like, how could you have ever doubted him?
I'm curious about this fight, and I'm going to use an old cliche I use on this show. Aldo's playing with house money here.
Well, yeah, he's literally got nothing to lose because he's getting a rematch way sooner than he thought he would. So he can go out there and throw everything in the kitchen sink at Holloway. The problem is, I think Holloway is probably the better striker, the faster striker, and the harder hitting striker. And he's only 25 and he's already this good. So I'm not sure you want to go out there and throw the kitchen sink at Holloway and think he can't handle it, because I think he can dish it right back out and then some.
I have a feeling this won't go the distance.
No, I suspect it could actually look almost exactly like the first fight, but that was fun to watch, so there's no reason not to watch it again.
No, I'm going to go with Holloway in the fourth round.
Well, speaking of fights that may not go the distance, Overeem and Nagano. These are two big boys. They are very muscular fighters, so the chance of either one of them having the conditioning for the 3 rounds, I mean, Overeem has gotten a little bit better about that, but I still don't trust it because I've seen him wither in fights that he was winning in the first round. But Nagano, I mean, he's the X factor here because he has come so far, so fast in this promotion, and now he's 10-1 and seemingly on the verge of a title shot if he beats a guy like Overeem, but it's almost too soon. Like, you would have really liked to have seen him, like, mature and develop a little bit more before he got to that point. So, what do you think, Peter?
So, I'm thinking when it comes to Overeem, I mean, we made the point about it earlier, fighters who are, with their record, I mean, Overeem is 58 fights now?
Yeah.
It's crazy that he's still at this high level, but, sorry. Nagano, yeah, he's on quite the tear. It's just, I think you're right. I think it's too much too soon. But Overeem, I'm having trouble with him because every time I pick against him, he wins. Every time I pick him, he loses.
Right.
So
yeah. You picked him to beat Stipe Miocic, and I told you were wrong, and you had egg on your face after that.
It's fine. It happens. With this fight, I'm going to lean more towards Nagano. I think this will be not a humbling fight, but it's going to really make Overeem after this fight reevaluate where he is in his career. I think this is going to be like a wake-up call fight for him.
Well, since it is almost 60 fights for Overeem, yeah, I kind of think so as well. I feel like, you know what you said, playing with house money? That's exactly how I feel about Francis Ngannou here, because he's a 31-year-old guy. He's rose up the rankings really fast in a very short amount of time. He's getting a fight with a guy that's 6 years older and several dozen more fights than him. He's playing with house money right now. He's thinking, if I go in there and I rock Alistair Overeem, I can just show the world what I'm made of, and I can move right into title contention. So he's got nothing to lose here.
All right, so let's move on to Henry Cejudo and Sergio Pettis.
Well, these are two guys who arguably should be fighting Demetrius Johnson, because Sergio Pettis is on a 4-fight win streak. He's beat Carriazo, Calades, Moraga, and Brandon Moreno, and looked good in each of those fights, even though they were all decisions. They were all solid wins for him. Cejudo is one of the greatest wrestlers in UFC right now. Very decorated Olympic gold medalist. He's tough as nails and only getting better in the striking department as he goes along in his career. We saw that when he knocked out Wilson Hayes. So I feel like eventually he is going to get that second shot at Demetrius Johnson, unless DJ retires first. But Sergio Pettis, with a good win here, can leap right over him in the line and get that title shot.
These are some young guys here who are going to throw everything. Basically, they want to make a statement with the win. It's going to be hard to predict because I can make the case for either fighter winning here.
Mm-hmm. Although, if I'm going to lean any one way, I'm going to lean towards Cejudo because of the fact that he's got that wrestling background. And you know what? Even though he's got knockout power in his hands now and his striking has improved, you know what's going to happen if he gets in trouble in the fight. He's going to go for the takedown, and he's going to get it.
Yeah, you're right. He is. The one thing is when I pick against Cejudo, he wins. That's the problem with Cejudo.
You're having that problem a lot with this card, aren't you?
I am.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll make this real easy for you. In the next fight, you don't even have to think about it. I'm picking Justin Gaethje all day.
Well, I'm going to pick Pettis in the previous fight, but yeah, I'm going to pick Gaethje as well. Eddie Alvarez, I don't think he'll have the right game plan to match Gaethje's skill set, and Gaethje will win this by probably TKO.
The thing is, Eddie Alvarez is probably going to try to box with him, and that's a mistake, because when you box with Justin Gaethje, you lose.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like no matter how hard you
That's
hit
not a
Justin
smart idea.
Gaethje, no matter how much you rock Justin Gaethje, he always comes back with one punch better. I've said this so many times, I'm almost tired of saying it now, but I don't know if that's good for his health long term, but in terms of winning fights, Justin Gaethje is the man.
Yeah, I have no problem picking Gaethje on this fight. Quickly moving on, we got Tisha Torres and Michelle Waterson.
The karate hottie, and she is coming back off being choked out by Rose Namajunas back in April, so looking to rebound here and get a win. Tisha Torres, the tiny tornado as she's called, she is on a bit of a roll. She's beat Beck Rawlings and Juliana Lima, so I feel like there is maybe a little more upside for Torres, but I've seen what the karate hottie can do with her striking, and I never want to count her out in a fight.
No, never. Yeah, I'm leaning towards Michelle Waterson here on this fight, just slightly. I will say Waterson by decision.
These are all very competitive fights. This is one hell of a lineup.
So as far as the prelims are concerned, we should pick on a few fights here.
I'll go with Paul Felder because I want him to win the fight and then join the commentary booth afterward.
Yeah, Charles Oliveira might have something to say about that, though.
I'm sure he does. This is the night of Oliveira's because we've also got Alex Oliveira against Yancy Medeiros.
In that fight, I'm going to go with Oliveira.
I will too.
There's one I'm interested in for your opinion, Stevie. It's Courtney Casey and Felice Herring.
Yeah, that one is a mixed bag because Casey is 7-4. She's won 3 of her last 4, beaten quality opponents in those 3 wins, Randa Marcos and Jessica Aguilar, among others. So it's interesting. But Felice Herring, she's on more of a roll right now. She's won 4 of her last 5, including 3 in a row. And she's also beaten some very good fighters, Kylan Curran, Alexa Grasso, and Justine Kish. So I'm giving a slight edge to Herring here.
Yeah, I actually am going to agree with you on this one. I think Herring wins this fight. I'm going to say she wins in the 3rd round.
Okay.
So that's going to do it for Glove Up or Shut Up this week. Stevie, what's on tap for Thursday night AMP?
I can't even think about that right now because all I can think about is all these MMA fights.
Fair enough. Yeah, you've got some headlines there with Raw taking place this week and SmackDown, of course, on Tuesday. And, I mean, the only thing I think you might mention some Starrcade from last week. I'm still surprised that was a house show. It wasn't on the network.
Nobody should have been surprised by that. They said all along they weren't going to air it, and they kept their word.
I know. It's just a shame. I would have loved to have seen that live.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So for Stevie J and Peter H, Hardcore Canadian, thanks for listening. As I always say, never leave it to the judges. Good night, everybody.
See ya.